Hello, and welcome to Kingdom Thoughts. I'm Pastor Scott. Today I want to touch on and talk about faith. Now, that's a wide variety, I guess, of what is faith truly. How much faith is faith? What is faith? Is faith just believing, or is it more kind of stuff? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit. I really want to touch bases on more of the spiritual gift of faith. As we see in 1 Corinthians, when Paul's giving a list of spiritual gifts, one of them is faith as a spiritual gift. And that's what 1 Corinthians 12, it mentions all these. I think I want to say it's in verse 9 where it says that. But there is an additional spirit of faith. There's an additional gift of faith. Normally we know that it says in Hebrews 11:6 that without faith it's impossible to please God, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he's a rewarder for those who seek him. So we know that each one of us must have some certain measure of faith. And we also know that faith, if we read on the beginning of Hebrews, it's faith is the assurance of things that are hoped for with the conviction of things not seen. And we also know, like when Romans, it says faith comes from hearing and hearing through the word of Christ. So I've used these scriptures before when talking about prophecy and how God still speaks, because it is very clear as we see the wording that they use. It's hearing, not reading, or not understanding. It's hearing, as we learned from Jesus when he was talking to the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees about there being an afterlife. He used something from the Old Testament that didn't mention anything about afterlife, but just the simple fact that Moses called God the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then at the time of Moses, none of those guys were alive on earth, but like he said, hey, he's the God of, meaning they're still alive in some aspect. So he's not the God of the dead. Otherwise, he would have called him, you were the God of Moses. You were the God. So, it's just, we pay attention to the words. This is all I'm saying, is that pay attention to the words in how it's written, what is written. It's not so much just to read scripture, but understand each word is put there specifically for a broader understanding of God and his word and a deeper understanding. Anyway, so we're talking about faith. And, Jesus was definitely moved by people's faith. We saw several times where it was their faith that healed him. The woman who touched his cloak, who was cursed with the bleeding, and he said, your faith has healed you. And then you got the guard who, was it a guard or was it a sentry? His servant was sick, and he said, I've never seen such greater faith in all of Israel, because all he said was, you just have to say he's healed and I know he'll be healed. You don't have to come and bother yourself with coming to my house. But so there is a measure of faith that we should have as believers. First of all, it's like we must totally believe that God is real. We must believe that he is there. As it says, it's impossible to please him without faith. For who would ever draw near close to God must believe that he exists. So there is that reward. Now here's the second part of that verse, is that he's also, the faith we have is he's a rewarder for those who seek him. So with that, we have faith that seeking him, he will reward us. And I'm not saying he's going to give us riches or anything like that. I'm not going to talk about the prosperity stuff, but I'm talking about when we seek him, there's a promise that he has. And that promise is we'll find him. And every time we find him, we're rewarded with more of him. I can't think of anything greater than that. But I want to talk about the measure of faith that's in 2 Corinthians when it talks about one of the spiritual gifts. This is an understanding of faith to be greater than just believing in God. That it's taking the rewarder of those who seek him to a whole new level, knowing that God said it, so be it. No matter what I see, I will follow through as if I've already received it. Like Jesus says, when you pray asking for anything, believe you received it, and you have. That is a gift of faith. The faith is a spiritual gift, which, like I said, every Christian should have a base of faith. But we also notice that sometimes There's people who struggle to believe that God's going to come through with some things. And it's not saying that they're not doubting in God. It's just they don't have that measure of faith. That might not be their spiritual gift. And that's okay, because there's different variations of the gifts. It says that each one, its gifting is according to their measure of faith. It's what God has decided to give. And 2 Corinthians also says, or 1 Corinthians also says, that it is all from the same Spirit. Some of them will have this gift, some of them will have that gift. But the gift of faith is the spiritual gift that enables some believers to trust God and his promises in every single circumstance. It's a supernatural manifestation that results from a faith-inspired proclamation. It can also be a passive reception of a miracle from God, somebody believing they're going to be healed or something like that, and just trusting in God so much. And that's happened in my life. There's some times where I just fully believed God was going to heal me no matter how sick I got, and eventually I got healed. I don't have asthma anymore for that. I don't have a dairy allergy anymore because of that. I ended up having full faith in God and knowing that no matter what, he's going to heal me when it's his time. I'm just trusting in him. That was the faith that I was given in that miraculous. Now, here's the other thing. Through all those faith aspects, my wife and I are still standing strong on some faith of some things that are really hard to picture being done any other way besides God. And what we need to understand, and I'm trying to figure the best way to go about this, is when it comes to somebody's gift of faith, it's never our job to discourage them. It is never our job to say, well, I don't think God's working that way. That's a discouragement of faith. There is never anything wrong with someone putting their full trust in God for anything in any measure. Just because I don't think it'll happen doesn't mean it won't. We need to understand that if somebody has a gift of faith or a feeling of faith or just fully believes God's going to come through, instead of discouraging them, why don't we figure a way to help them through it? How can I assist with that? Man, I would love to see God come through with that. I don't think anybody in here or anybody listening to this would see somebody struggling with something and said, I know God's going to come through. And I don't think anybody who's listening to this, I don't think any good Christian would say, well, I don't want God to come through on that. No, I think we would all be like, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And some of us will have our doubts. Absolutely. We're going to have doubts, but that person doesn't. We don't need to discourage them. In fact, what is the whole purpose of prophecy in 1 Corinthians is to uplift and encourage and edify. I can uplift and encourage. Okay, I don't have faith in that, but I could pray that God comes through. I pray that God comes through on that. How amazing would that be if that happened through? Instead of discouraging, maybe we could find ways to assist. If somebody's expecting God to bring them a car or whatever, or build them a house, which, hello, we're here with that. If someone, instead of saying, well, God doesn't do it that way, how about you say, well, I'd like to help in any way. Here's some good faith money. Here, I'm able to hammer. I'm able to do something to assist with that. God has definitely given us spiritual gifts for one another. So if somebody has a spiritual gift of faith, maybe that's a calling to those who don't have faith to go and assist and help them through that, to build them up through that, not to discourage them and say God doesn't come through that way. That's the biggest discouragement ever. I haven't read anything in Scripture where God says, oh, if you believe in me and really think it's going to happen, I'm not going to come through. No, he'll bring it and answer it to the way he sees fit. And we never know what that's going to be until the time comes, I don't know. I just know I have faith in the matter. I know that God's going to come through. And if he doesn't, it doesn't change a thing. I'm still going to serve my God, because in it, I can understand that he had a different process for everything. I know many times when I'm thinking about building something or doing something, and I have faith that it's going to be done, and it never comes to that fruition of being completed. However, I was built in that. I was strengthened in that. I was brought closer to God through that. So that miraculous gift of faith doesn't necessarily even mean that the thing will happen, but through the times where I was waiting on God, I became closer to God. And in that, my faith was built. There were some things where I thought for sure God was going to come through, and when it ended up not coming through that certain way, it was completely different in a way that I didn't even expect. But the amazing thing about it is I was built up to him, got closer to him, and he rewarded me with him. And that was the amazing thing. God blesses is a rewarder for those who seek him. So when somebody has faith, they're in the process of seeking God for a circumstance. Now, he may come through with what they're asking, but more importantly, he's going to come through and be with them more, and more. See, we got to really focus closely on how we react towards people who might have faith. If you don't have faith, and first of all, if you don't have faith in God, start praying, start seeking him, start looking for him, read the word, start looking for him, praying for him, or praying with him, to him, and really, really soul search where he is in your life. That growth will be there. And if you're struggling in the faith in God, surround yourself with godly people. Turn off the naysayers, turn off the things that talk bad about God. In fact, turn off news, turn off anything that's not of God, and surround yourself in him. Fully embrace yourself in him, because you will find him. Many times people have doubts in God because they're playing with the world still. It's when we stop playing with the world and totally surrender to him do we see him. Why? Because he's a rewarder for those who seek him. It's not he's a rewarder for those who sit back on the sidelines and wait. No, he's a rewarder for those who seek him. Earnestly step on the field and say, God, where are you? I'm looking for you. Start looking in his word. Start not just reading or listening or hearing the word, but doing the word, as it says in James. I know we've talked about this one a few times. Be doers of the word, not just hearers, because otherwise you're deceiving yourself. If you're just a hearer of the word, there's so much room for doubt. It's not until you become a doer of that word do you see the fruit of that word. You see what that word can produce, and you see the life that's in that word, and it can change you, and you're no longer self-deceived. So it's the same thing with faith in God. If you're in that point, focus on God. Dive in. Let go of any worldly thing and just give him your all. Give him your all, and he's going to make himself so real. That's the faith in God. I'm talking about today also moving on, the miraculous faith of the gift. Some people have it, some people don't. If you don't have it, don't discourage those who do. Pray for those who do. Pray that God comes through. Pray that he grows your faith. I don't think there's a single spiritual gift that God would be mad at us if we asked for more. I don't think he would be mad. I think at any point, God, if I could have this too, that'd be great. If I could have this too, that'd be great. It all depends on the heart of why you're asking. In James, it says if we ask for wisdom with faith, but with faith of understanding that he's a rewarder for those who earnestly seek him. The faith is the same as that. I believe he's coming through. I believe he's coming through. I'm going to ask for wisdom, and I know he's going to give it to me because I asked him. That's with anything, any spiritual gift. We can put that in there. It's the same context to what I said earlier about Jesus, the Sadducees, Pharisees. The wording is there for a reason. If Jesus says it, then it must mean that for all of who God is. If the scriptures say it must be that for all of God is. If it says whatever you ask for in prayer, go away like you've already received it, then you have. So we must walk as if it's a done deal. I asked him. It doesn't matter what it's about. The thing is, if we're asking for fleshly, worldly things, there might be a delay or there might be a no, because many times it's not prayed for in the right will of God. The will of God, as we see everywhere else in Scripture, is for the giving, for the laying down of myself, for the encouraging others, for the uplifting of others. Jesus says it very clearly. What greater love is this than a friend to lay down his life for his friends? That's the kind of will that we need to pray in. It is, I don't want this for me. I want this for others. And, like even praying for certain things in our life with the faith we have, we know God's going to come through with it, but we don't have it for an intention of our own. We have it for an intention to be used for others. I think God's going to come through on that. And if he doesn't, he's going to grow me either way. That's the amazing thing about faith, is I believe that God is going to come through in one way or another. And you know what? Sometimes no is an answer to prayer, and that's fine, as long as God answers. I really want to strive this. Let's stop discouraging. Let's stop discouraging and start encouraging. Let's stop looking at how God does it in my life, so he must do it in not everyone else's life, and realize that there's a different measure of faith that each person has. And each gift is given by the same Spirit, as it said in 1 Corinthians. And we need to realize that I might not have this gift, but that person may. They call on the name of the Lord and they're having this kind of faith, and I don't have this faith. It's not time to discourage them. It's time to uplift them. It's time to pray, God, come through. It's time to say, God, is there anything I should do to help with this? Because God uses his people. We see that everywhere. He uses his people. God could have set the Israelites free out of Egypt without using Moses. He could have. But he used Moses. He used a man. Let him use you. I hope this reaches and helps somebody today. Be blessed.